My children valued my daughter-in-law's party more than me, so I cut ties. The first thing I heard was a machine insisting on life. A steady beep, then a stutter, then a steady beep again, like a nervous metronome counting down the seconds I had left. The ceiling above my bed was a pale rectangle of hospital light, too bright for the hour, too clean for what had happened inside my body. My chest felt like it had been pried open and stitched shut by a stranger in a hurry. Every breath scraped. Every swallow tasted of metal. Hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss our latest uploads. It was past 2 in the morning. The corridor outside my room slept in a hush broken only by distant wheels and muffled voices. In the corner, a bag of clear fluid dripped through a line into my arm, as if the hospital was slowly refilling whatever I had spent my whole life giving away. A nurse moved near the foot of my bed, quiet as a prayer. She had gentle hands and eyes that didn't flinch from mine. "Mrs. Hart," she said softly, reading from my chart, "try to rest. You've been through a lot. Rest." The word would have been funny if I'd had the energy to laugh. Because rest was what my sons had chosen. Resting in the warm glow of a ballroom while their mother's heart failed, restarted, failed again. I stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. Then I turned my head toward the dark window. City lights glittered in the distance like a careless necklace. Beautiful, indifferent. Somewhere out there, my oldest son, Owen, was raising a glass. Somewhere out there, my youngest, Caleb, was nodding along to music he probably didn't even like, because it mattered to his wife. When the doctor had told me what they said, it had sounded like a bad joke delivered with a straight face. He had stood at the edge of my bed hours earlier, his expression clipped and professional, the kind you wear when you can't afford to feel what you're saying. "We called them," he explained. "We told them you coded in the ambulance. More than once. We told them we needed family here immediately." I remember blinking at him, slow and stupid from anesthesia, trying to make the sentence fit inside my mind. "And..." He hesitated, as if choosing between truth and mercy. He chose the truth. "Your son said they couldn't come. There was a birthday event. They couldn't leave their guests. Birthday event. Not, we're on our way. Not, put us on speaker. Not, let us talk to her. A birthday event." Even now, the rage moved under my skin like electricity, making my hands tremble against the blanket. It wasn't the medication. It was the shock of finally seeing the shape of my place in their lives. The nurse, her name tag read Lila, checked the monitor and frowned. "Your blood pressure's climbing. Try to breathe with me, okay? In and out." I did what she asked, but the breath caught halfway, tangled in memory. I remembered the first time Owen cried from a fever, cheeks hot and eyes glassy, and how I sat on the kitchen floor all night with him pressed against my shoulder because he would only sleep if he could feel my heartbeat. I remembered Caleb's first day of school, his little backpack too big, his lip trembling until I knelt in front of him and promised, "No matter what, I will always show up." And I remembered my husband leaving anyway. He left when the boys were teenagers, tired of the bills, tired of responsibility, tired of a life that asked him to grow up. One afternoon he said he needed air, and he never came back. The boys asked questions I couldn't answer. I told them a story that sounded kinder than the truth. And then I worked myself into a person made of schedules and sacrifices. I cleaned office buildings before dawn, my hands raw from industrial soap. I waited tables during the day, smiling until my cheeks ached, taking abuse from strangers who treated me like furniture. At night I mended clothes under a lamp, needle flashing, back bent, thinking of tuition bills and groceries and school trips and braces. I learned how to stretch a pound of ground meat into 3 meals. I learned which stores discounted bread at closing time. I learned how to swallow exhaustion and look like a mother who had it together. And I did have it together. I held everything together with thread and willpower and a kind of love that never asked if it was being returned. I told myself it was temporary. That once the boys were grown, once they were stable, I would finally breathe. But adulthood arrived for them like a train they caught without looking back. Owen married first. His wife, Serena, had the kind of smile that belonged on a billboard. Perfect, bright, and completely detached from the eyes. The first time she came to my home, she didn't say it was cozy or warm or full of memories. She said, "Oh," and looked at my furniture like it had offended her. At dinner she complimented my casserole in a voice that made it sound like pity. "You must have worked so hard," she said. The way she said it made hard sound like small. Later, Owen pulled me aside. "Serena's family does Christmas differently," he explained, already defensive. "They go all out. It's just tradition." So the turkey I bought that year sat in my fridge, untouched, while I ate microwave leftovers and told myself it was fine. I told myself he was building a new family. I told myself the ache would fade. Caleb married 2 years after that. His wife, Marin, didn't insult me outright. She was smoother. She made little comments that slid into my skin and stayed there. "That sweater is so classic," she'd say, smiling tight. "They don't really make those anymore." Or when I cooked the lasagna my boys used to beg for, she'd dab her mouth delicately and say, "It's delicious, truly. Just a bit heavy. We're trying to make lighter food these days." Lighter. Modern. Healthier. As if my food was the reason my sons grew up loved and strong. The invitations changed. First they moved further apart. Then they became shorter. Then they became obligations. "Stop by if you want," Owen would say, like I was a neighbor with a spare minute. Caleb took to calling on Sundays with the tone of someone checking off a list. "Hi, Mom. Is everything okay? Good. Busy week. We'll talk later." Later came next week. Next week came whenever. And still I showed up. When Owen said he and Serena found a house they couldn't lose, I didn't ask why their combined salaries weren't enough. I didn't ask why I had to be the bridge between their desire and reality. I sold the only house I'd ever owned, the one where I'd measured the boys' heights on the doorframe, the one with the tiny backyard where Caleb once planted a sunflower seed and watched it grow taller than him. I moved into an apartment on the 4th floor of a building that smelled like old carpet and loneliness. No elevator. My knees complained with every trip up the stairs. Owen promised it would be temporary. 2 years, he said, looking sincere. "I'll pay you back, Mom." 2 years became 8. When Caleb's business plan collapsed under the weight of his optimism, he came to me with a tight jaw and wide eyes. "I just need a little help," he said. "It's an investment." I handed over what I had left. Money saved from skipping haircuts and buying discount meat and working weekends at a church bazaar. He promised he'd return it with interest. The business closed before the season changed. He shrugged like it was weather. "That's how it goes," he said. "Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose." I lost. Again. Then came the smaller cuts. Serena telling me my dress color wasn't appropriate for her holiday photos. Marin suggesting my Sunday dinners were too much work, and that takeout was easier, both of them smiling while they erased my place at the table. And I adjusted. Like I always did. Until the pain began. It started as pressure at night, a heavy hand on my chest at 3 in the morning. I told myself it was stressful. I told myself it was age. I told myself it was indigestion because admitting fear felt like weakness, and weakness had never been something my family made room for. On the Sunday before Marin's big birthday event, I sat at Owen's table while Serena served a salad that looked like punishment. No one mentioned my birthday, which had been the day before. No one asked if I wanted cake. No one said, "We're glad you're here." Caleb looked at his phone and said, "You seem tired, Mom." "I'm fine," I lied. Serena laughed lightly. At our age, we really have to listen to our bodies. Our age. She was 33. That night the pain intensified. It crawled into my jaw, wrapped around my left arm, made my stomach churn. I called Owen near midnight, voice thin. "Mom. What's wrong?" His tone was irritated, as if I'd interrupted something important. "I don't feel right," I said. "My chest hurts." "Did you take tea?" he asked. Maybe it's stress. You've been tense. Then he said, we can check on you tomorrow. After the party. After. Like my body could schedule an emergency. I called my neighbor, Nora, at dawn. She took one look at my face and didn't let me argue. She dragged me into a cab, held my hand while I gasped, and told the paramedics my symptoms with the precision of someone who refused to lose another person. In the ambulance, the world narrowed to sirens and pain. Then the pain vanished into nothingness. And when I woke, alive by technical definition, I learned my sons had chosen champagne over the sound of my voice. Now, in the blue hospital light, I listened to the monitor beep and understood something with a clarity that felt like ice. My boys had grown into men who believed my strength was infinite. Infinite meant disposable. Lila adjusted my blanket, careful not to touch the incision. Do you want me to call someone? She asked. A friend? Anyone you trust. I swallowed against the metallic taste and thought of Nora asleep in a chair earlier, of the warm weight of her loyalty. I have one person, I said. And your sons. I stared at the closed door. No flowers. No rushed footsteps. No frantic apologies. I don't think I have sons, I whispered. The words landed in the air and didn't break. Something inside me, deeper than bone, shifted into place. Not grief. Decision. By morning, the hospital smelled like coffee and bleach, and the daylight made everything look more honest than it wanted to be. Nora arrived with my favorite tea and a face set in stubborn kindness. How are you feeling? She asked, but her eyes demanded the truth. What do you think? I said. She didn't pretend not to understand. She sat, took my hand, and squeezed. They didn't come. It wasn't a question. I shook my head, and anger rose so fast the monitor complained. Later that afternoon, the doctor returned and explained the surgery in careful terms, but all I heard was the part where he said I had been gone for minutes and brought back by strangers. When the phone finally rang, it was Owen. Mom, he said, too casual, too late. We just heard you were in the hospital. Why didn't you tell us? I stared at the receiver like it had grown teeth. The doctors called you, I said quietly. They told you I might not survive the night. A pause. Then his voice shifted into irritation disguised as logic. Look, Marin's event was complicated. People traveled. You know how it is. And you always bounce back, Mom. Always. Like my body was a rubber band. You're okay now, he continued, relieved to find the outcome convenient. So it's fine. We'll visit soon. Sunday maybe. Sunday. Like seeing me was an errand. I hung up without saying goodbye. When Caleb and Marin arrived later, they looked like people stepping into an unpleasant appointment. Marin's hair was perfect. Caleb's shirt smelled faintly of cologne. They stayed far from my bed, as if closeness might make them accountable. Marin smiled. You gave us such a scare. Caleb nodded. Everything's fine now, right? The doctor fixed it. I watched them talk about the event. How beautiful it was, how much effort it took, how important it was for their image. Their words floated over me like smoke. Then Marin said, honestly, we couldn't have done anything here. We're not doctors. It's better we were where we could be useful. Useful. I listened until my calm hardened into something sharp. You're right, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. You shouldn't feel guilty. Relief flashed across their faces. You shouldn't feel guilty, I repeated, because guilt requires a conscience. Marin's smile cracked. Caleb stood, offended. Mom, that's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is that I spent my life making sure you never felt abandoned. And you abandoned me the first time it mattered. They left soon after, irritated, not remorseful. That night, while the hospital quieted again, I asked Lila for paper. She brought it without questions. And I began to write. Not a dramatic letter, not a plea, but a record. A ledger of truth. A farewell written by a woman who had finally stopped apologizing for needing love. I wrote until my hand cramped, until my throat burned from swallowed sobs, until the sun threatened the edge of the window again. I didn't decorate the words. I didn't soften them. I wrote about the house I sold, the money I gave, the years I stayed alone so no man would ever make my children feel second place. I wrote about the slow disappearance, holidays replaced by excuses, dinners replaced by silence, my presence reduced to an inconvenience managed by wives with polished smiles. I wrote the part that mattered most, the moment they chose a party over my life. When Nora arrived, she found me sitting up, pages stacked neatly beside me, eyes dry in a way that frightened her. "What is that?" she asked. "My exit," I said. She blinked. "From what?" "From begging," I replied. "From pretending scraps are love." I told her my plan. Not to vanish into danger. Not to harm myself. To leave. Cleanly, legally, and permanently. Nora listened like someone hearing a storm being born. When I mentioned a small account my sons didn't know about, money I'd saved quietly after the last investment drained me, her mouth tightened with approval. "You really thought of everything," she said. "I've been thinking of this for years," I admitted. "I just didn't know it yet." I told her about my cousin in another city, an older woman, child-free, independent, someone who once said, half-jokingly, "If you ever get tired of being everyone's foundation, come build a life near me." Nora nodded slowly. "You're sure?" "I'm sure," I said. "I'm not punishing them. I'm choosing myself." That evening, I called my cousin, Evelyn. Her voice brightened when she heard mine. "Goodness, you sound tired. What happened?" "I need a fresh start," I said. "Is your offer still real?" "It was always real," she replied without hesitation. "Come. You can stay as long as you want. We'll figure everything out together." I hung up feeling something I hadn't felt in decades. Not hope like a wish. Hope like a plan. On Sunday, my sons arrived exactly when they said they would, as if punctuality could substitute for devotion. They came with their wives, with the same distant kisses and the same careful posture, like they didn't want to get too emotionally close to a problem they intended to outsource. They talked about options. They talked about safety. They talked about a facility where I could live so they wouldn't have to worry. Marin described it with enthusiasm, as if choosing a nursing home was like choosing curtains. "It's clean," she said. "They have activities. It's actually not that expensive." Owen nodded. "You'll be around people your age. It'll be good." Serena added, "And if something happens, professionals will handle it. We can't always drop everything." There it was, finally spoken without disguise. They didn't want to love me. They wanted to manage me. I watched them, and instead of anger I felt a quiet clarity, like a door clicking shut. "I think you're right," I said. All four of them relaxed. "I do need a radical change," I continued, and smiled in a way that made Serena pause. They stayed an hour, discussing my future like I wasn't in the room. When they left, the air smelled like expensive perfume and indifference. Nora arrived just after, carrying a small suitcase and a calm face. "You ready?" she asked. I looked around the hospital room, white sheets, borrowed time, and the hum of machines, and felt absolutely no attachment. "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." That night, with quiet help and careful timing, I walked out like a visitor. Not stolen. Not kidnapped. Liberated. I placed the envelope on my pillow before I left, my sons' names written in my own handwriting, my goodbye waiting for them like the truth. And then I stepped into the parking lot, the cool air kissing my face like a blessing. The bus station smelled like diesel and cheap coffee, and it was the most alive I'd felt in years. Nora sat beside me while we waited, her hand covering mine when my chest tightened, not from fear, but from the strangeness of choosing myself so completely. When the bus finally arrived, I climbed aboard with my suitcase and a heart that had been repaired by surgeons and reclaimed by my own decision. As the city slid away, I turned off my phone. Not out of cruelty. Out of peace. By mid-morning, I arrived in a new place under bright sun and unfamiliar streets. Evelyn waited near the curb, waving as if she'd been expecting me her whole life. She hugged me without hesitation, without checking the time, without asking what it would cost her. "You're safe," she said simply. "That's what matters." Her home was warm and full of light. The guest room smelled of lavender. A window looked out onto a small garden where flowers grew without anyone demanding they prove their worth. That afternoon, I ate soup at a real table with someone who asked me questions and actually waited for my answers. And then the call came. Nora's voice was low but steady. I delivered the letter. My stomach flipped. Not regret, but anticipation. How did they take it? I asked. A pause. Like people who just realized their own choices have consequences. She described Owen's face as draining of color. Serena's outrage, as if a mother leaving was a crime but a mother being ignored was normal. Caleb dialing my phone again and again, fingers shaking. Marin insisted it was dramatic, then crying when she realized dramatic didn't mean fake. They kept demanding I tell them where you went, Nora said. I told them the truth. I don't know. Silence filled my new room as I listened. For once, their panic didn't move me. Because it wasn't love that made them afraid. It was a loss. Over the next few days, messages arrived. Pleading, angry, bargaining, apologizing too late. I didn't answer. I read them once, then put the phone away like a chapter I'd finished. Weeks passed. I learned the rhythms of my new life. Morning walks with women who laughed easily. A part-time job in a small shop where customers called me ma'am with respect, not impatience. An art class where my hands that had cleaned, cooked, sewn, served, finally made something for me. I began to sleep through the night. I began to breathe without bracing for disappointment. One afternoon, in a dance class I almost skipped because old habits still whispered that joy was selfish. A widower named Thomas offered his hand with a smile that held no agenda. "Would you like to?" he asked. And I realized how rare it was, in my old life, for anyone to ask what I wanted. So I said yes. Not because I needed romance. Because I deserved kindness. On my next birthday, Evelyn baked a small cake. A few friends from the park brought flowers cut from their own gardens. No one acted like my existence was inconvenient. No one needed me to be endlessly strong to justify their care. That night, I wrote in a notebook Evelyn gave me. I wrote that leaving didn't erase the past, but it finally stopped the past from eating my future. I wrote that motherhood, done right, is love, not ownership. And if my sons had confused my devotion for an unbreakable chain, that was their mistake, not my duty. I wrote that the bravest decision of my life wasn't working 3 jobs, or selling my home, or swallowing insults at family dinners. It was looking at a lifetime of crumbs and deciding I was worthy of a full meal. And for the first time in 40 years, that certainty felt like enough. By the time the afternoon light shifted from white to honey, the ward had begun to feel like a stage where everyone knew their lines except me. Nurses glided in and out, doctors spoke in careful phrases, carts rattled past my door, and somewhere down the hall a television murmured with a game show that sounded too cheerful for a place built around pain. I lay back against the raised bed, staring at my hands. They looked older than they had a week ago, as if my skin had decided to admit what my mind had avoided for years. Nora returned after lunch, her coat still on, a knit hat tucked under her arm. She brought a paper cup of tea and a sandwich I could barely taste. She sat close enough that I could feel the warmth from her shoulder, the steady presence of someone who didn't disappear when things turned ugly. "They didn't come," she said again, not accusing, simply naming the truth. "No," I answered. "They didn't." Nora's jaw tightened. "What did the doctor tell you exactly?" I told her word for word, because the words had burned themselves into me. I repeated the phrases about cardiac arrests and critical conditions last night on Earth. I repeated the part where Owen's voice had carried through the doctor's phone speaker, confident, breezy, almost amused. I repeated Caleb's request to come tomorrow, as if life were a package that could be left at the door until a convenient time. Nora listened with her hands clasped tight in her lap. When I finished, she exhaled through her nose, slow and controlled. "They didn't deserve you," she said. The sentence landed softly, not like a dramatic verdict but like a quiet observation that had been waiting years to be spoken. My eyes stung and I turned my face toward the window so she wouldn't see. Outside, the city moved as if nothing had happened. Cars flowed along the road. People crossed sidewalks. Somewhere, someone was laughing in a cafe. The normal world kept turning while mine had almost stopped. The door opened and a doctor stepped in. Dr. Klein this time, the cardiologist with rimless glasses and a voice trained to be both kind and efficient. He greeted Nora politely, checked my chart, and asked me to rate my pain. 4, I lied. It was closer to 7, but I was tired of being measured and managed. He explained medications, follow-ups, the risk of another event. He spoke about diet changes, stress reduction, cardiac rehab. He asked, almost as an afterthought, "Do you have family support at home?" My throat tightened. Nora answered before I could. "I'm her support," she said firmly. Dr. Klein nodded, satisfied enough, and moved on. When he left, the room felt smaller, as if his question had pushed the walls inward. "I can stay the night," Nora offered. "You don't have to," I said automatically, the old reflex of never wanting to be a burden. Nora's eyebrows lifted. "Don't do that," she warned. "Don't make yourself small. Not anymore." I swallowed. The monitor beeped. Somewhere inside my ribs, my heart thudded like a fist. That evening the ward grew quieter. The light outside dimmed, and the window became a mirror that showed me my own face in the glass. Pale, bruised beneath the eyes, hair flattened, lips dry. A woman who had been emptied out and stitched together again. My phone sat on the tray table, face down. It had been silent for hours. No missed calls. No texts. No frantic, late-arriving concern. A nurse I hadn't met yet came in to change my 4-bag. She introduced herself as Lila, the same one from the night before, her voice soft, her movements gentle. She checked my blood pressure and frowned. "It's creeping up again," she said. "Are you feeling anxious?" "I'm feeling informed," I replied. Lila hesitated, unsure how to respond, then offered the only thing she had. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. After she left, I turned the phone over and stared at the dark screen as if it might suddenly light up with a message that would erase everything. But it stayed blank. And in that blankness, a memory rose with ruthless clarity. Owen at 2 years old, arms raised, crying for me. Caleb at 5, running to me after falling off his bike, blood on his knee, trusting that my hands could fix anything. They had trusted me. They had taken it without question. And I had given always, without demanding the simplest return. Nora dozed in the chair, chin tucked toward her chest, a blanket pulled over her knees. The sight of her there, tired, stubbornly present, made something in me crack. Not my anger. Something more tender. Something that had been starved. I reached for the call button, then stopped. I didn't want a nurse. I wanted to speak. To get the poison out of my chest before it pushed my blood pressure higher and my stitches tore. I whispered Nora's name. She startled awake, blinking. "What is it? Are you hurting?" "Yes," I said. "But not where they cut me." Nora leaned forward, attentive. I took a breath and forced myself to say it. "I think I've been living like a volunteer my whole life. Like I signed up for a job that never ends." Nora's eyes softened. "You were a mother," she said. "I was a resource," I corrected. "A reliable one." The words tasted bitter. Yet as I spoke to them, they also tasted true. I told her about the first year after their father left. How I would stand in the bathroom, hands on the sink, staring at my own reflection, trying to remember what it felt like to be desired, to be seen as a woman and not a machine. I told her about the widower down the street who used to bring me daisies. How I'd refused him because I was afraid of choosing anything for myself. How I'd believed sacrifice was the purest form of love. Nora listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Sacrifice without respect turns into a kind of slow theft." The phrase hit me hard. Slow theft. That was exactly what it had been. Not one dramatic robbery, but years of quiet taking. Time, money, energy, patience, until my life felt like a house stripped bare. "What are you going to do?" Nora asked, voice low. I opened my mouth, and the answer surprised me with how ready it was. "I'm going to stop," I said. "Stop what?" "Stop being available by default," I replied. "Stop making it easy for them to treat me like an obligation." Nora studied my face, as if looking for hesitation. "That sounds like a boundary," she said carefully. "Not a punishment." I nodded. "I don't want revenge," I lied, and then I sighed. "No. That's not honest. A part of me wants them to feel what I felt. But mostly I want to feel quiet. I want my life to stop revolving around whether they remember I exist." The next morning, Saturday, the phone rang early. The sound startled me so badly the monitor scolded. My hand shook as I grabbed the receiver. For half a second, I thought it might be a nurse calling from the desk. But the caller ID displayed Owen. I almost didn't answer. Then I did, because curiosity can be as strong as love. "Mom," Owen said, and there was a brightness in his tone that felt indecent. "How are you doing? Serena told me you're stable." "That's good." Stable. Like a building that hadn't collapsed yet. "Owen," I said, "the doctors told you I might die." A pause. Not grief. Not alarm. A pause like someone searching for the correct response. "I know," he said finally, voice shifting into annoyance. "But you didn't, right? You're okay. So, why are you so upset?" The question stole my breath. My fingers tightened around the receiver. Nora, awake in the chair now, watched me with narrowed eyes. "I'm upset," I said slowly, "because you made a choice." Owen sighed. "Mom, you're making it sound like we chose the party over you. That's not fair." "That's exactly what you did," I replied. He began listing reasons. Guests. Travel. Cost. Commitments. Serena's family expectations. Words poured out as if logic could scrub away the image of my empty bedside. At the end he said, "We'll come by tomorrow afternoon. After brunch with Serena's parents." "Okay. Tomorrow. After brunch." "Okay." As if I were a calendar entry. I heard myself laugh. One short, sharp sound. "No," I said. The line went quiet. "No." Owen repeated, as if he hadn't heard correctly. "No," I said again, and felt my heart pound with strange relief. "Don't come tomorrow. Don't come because you feel pressured. Don't come to soothe yourselves." His voice hardened. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. You always do this when you don't get your way." My way. As if wanting my sons at my bedside when I was dying was a preference like choosing a restaurant. I lowered my voice until it was calm. "Owen," I said, "I'm not asking for anything from you anymore." He scoffed. "Fine. Then don't complain when we can't drop everything for you." "I won't," I said and meant it. "Goodbye." I hung up before he could say more. My hand shook so badly I had to set the receiver down with both hands. Nora stood and came to my bedside. "You said no," she murmured, half amazed. "I did," I said. My throat burned. "And I didn't die." Nora's mouth trembled with a smile that wasn't happy but proud. "That's a start," she said. Later, Caleb called. His approach was different. Softer, more cautious, like a man stepping around a sleeping dog. He opened with concern. "Mom, I'm sorry. We didn't understand." "You did understand," I said. They told you. He tried to shift the blame onto confusion, miscommunication, exaggeration. He used my history against me, reminding me of times I'd brushed off pain, times I'd recovered. You've always been strong, he said. And you've always used that, I replied. Silence. Then he said, Marin's been stressed. The party was important for her work connections. I had to support my wife. And who supports your mother? I asked. He had no answer. The line filled with his breathing. We'll come see you, he finally offered. We can bring flowers. We can talk. Do you know what I want? I asked. What? I want you to remember, I said. Not tomorrow. Not after brunch. Not after the guests leave. I want you to remember that my life isn't supposed to fit into your convenience. His voice cracked slightly. Mom, don't do this. I'm not doing anything, I replied. I'm seeing. When I ended the call, my chest hurt in a different way than the incision. It hurts like mourning, but not for them. For me. For the woman who had spent decades believing that if she just loved hard enough, she could force love to exist on the other side. By afternoon, messages finally arrived. Short, clipped ones from Serena. A longer one from Marin, written like a corporate apology. Words like unfortunate timing, and misunderstanding, and we care about you, are arranged neatly like decorations. None of them said, we were wrong. None of them said, we should have been there. That night, Lila found me staring at the wall and asked if I wanted something to help me sleep. I don't want to sleep, I said. I want to remember this feeling. I don't want it to fade. Lila perched on the edge of the chair, careful not to intrude. Sometimes people don't know what they've lost until it's gone, she said. I looked at her. Then I'm going to let them learn, I replied. When Nora left to shower and change clothes, I asked Lila for a pen and paper. She brought them without questions, setting them gently on my tray. The first sentence came out steady, like a door closing. Dear Owen and Caleb. I wrote their names with my full hand, not the softened, affectionate nicknames I used when I wanted to keep peace. I wrote as a woman, not as a mother begging to be chosen. I wrote until my wrist ached, until my eyes blurred, until the pages smelled faintly of antiseptic and truth. I wrote about the house, the money, the nights, the meals, the way my love had been treated like an endless account they could withdraw from without checking the balance. And when I reached the part about the phone call, the doctor's voice, their excuses, the party, I paused. Not because it hurt to write it. Because it felt like writing the last line of a life that no longer belonged to me. I set the pen down, breathed carefully through the tightness in my chest, and looked at the closed door. No footsteps came. No one hurried in, guilt-stricken and apologetic. Only the steady, stubborn beep of a machine reminded me that my heart, against all odds, was still working. And so, I decided I would learn to work for myself. Nora returned near midnight with damp hair and a clean sweatshirt, carrying the smell of soap and cold air. She read my face and didn't ask what my sons had said. Instead she asked, "Do you need anything?" I tapped the stack of pages. "I need you to hold on to this when I'm done," I said. "Not to deliver it yet. Just keep it safe." Nora's gaze dropped to the first line and lifted again. "Are you ending things with them?" "I'm ending the version of me they're used to," I replied. "The one who swallows everything and calls it love." She nodded. "Then we'll do it your way. Calm. Clean." I wrote 2 more paragraphs, short, brutal truths, and then stopped, not because I ran out of words, but because I ran out of denial. I folded the pages carefully, the way I used to fold their school permission slips, and slipped them into an envelope. My hands still shook, but the shaking felt like release. When I lay back, the ceiling looked the same, but I didn't. I was awake in a new sense, and I could not unsee it. Tomorrow, I will decide what freedom is required next. I lay awake long after Nora drifted back into uneasy sleep, the envelope resting in the drawer beside my bed like a living thing. Every few minutes my eyes slid toward it, as if it might open on its own and finish the work I had started. The machines hummed, the hallway lights dimmed further, and the hospital settled into that peculiar nighttime stillness where everything feels suspended between life and death. For years I had believed clarity came from time, from waiting, enduring, forgiving again and again until understanding eventually appeared. But clarity, I was learning, didn't come from patience. It came from impact. From the moment something struck hard enough to crack the illusion. I thought of the first Christmas I spent alone after Owen married. I had told everyone I was fine with it. I had even convinced myself. I cooked less food that year, wrapped fewer gifts, told myself it was a relief not to manage everything. I ate standing at the kitchen counter, the television murmuring in the background, and went to bed early. I called it independence. I called it maturity. I didn't call it what it really was. Practice. Practice for disappearing. Around 3 in the morning I felt the ache in my chest sharpen, not enough to summon a nurse, but enough to make me breathe carefully. Fear flickered, quick and bright. I pressed my palm lightly over the bandage, grounding myself in the fact that I was still here. That my body, despite everything, was trying. "If you're going to keep me alive," I whispered into the quiet room, unsure who I was addressing, "then I'm going to change what I'm alive for." Morning arrived gray and rain-soaked. Drops traced lazy paths down the window, distorting the city beyond. Nora woke stiff and sore, apologized for snoring, and went to get coffee. When she returned, she brought news without drama. "Your youngest left a voicemail," she said. "I didn't listen. I figured that's your choice." "Thank you," I replied, and meant it more deeply than she could know. I didn't listen to it either. The idea of his voice, careful, defensive, rehearsed, felt exhausting. Instead, I asked Nora to read aloud from the newspaper she'd brought. Mundane headlines. Local stories. Weather forecasts. Ordinary life. It felt grounding to hear about potholes and school board meetings. Reminders that the world was larger than my family's failures. Later that morning, Dr. Klein returned with a clipboard and a smile that meant he was pleased. "Your numbers look better today," he said. "If things continue like this, we can talk about discharge planning in a few days." Discharge. The word should have filled me with relief. Instead it filled me with a question. "Home," he continued, assuming. "With support, of course." I didn't correct him. Not yet. After he left, I stared at the ceiling again, but this time the image of my apartment rose clearly in my mind. The narrow hallway, the dim kitchen, the couch that still smelled faintly of old detergent. The place where my sons rarely visited. The place where I had waited by the phone. "I don't want to go back there," I said aloud. Nora looked up from her crossword. "Then don't." The simplicity of it stunned me. "I mean it," she continued. "You don't owe anyone a return to the same old patterns." The thought unfurled slowly, like something stretching after a long sleep. Not going back. Not returning to the role that nearly killed me. Not dramatically, but steadily. That afternoon, Serena sent a message. It was long and polished, filled with phrases that sounded reasonable on the surface. She apologized for the timing, expressed concern for my health journey, and suggested we all sit down together once I was feeling stronger. There was no acknowledgement of choice, only inconvenience. I read it twice, then deleted it. Something shifted inside me when I did. No spike of guilt. No rush of fear. Just a clean, quiet certainty. Caleb tried again that evening. I watched the phone vibrate on the tray table until it stopped. Then again. And again. On the third attempt, I picked it up, not to answer, but to turn it off completely. The silence afterward felt immense. Lila came in to check my vitals and smiled when she saw me sitting up, shoulders squared. "You look different today," she said. "Lighter." "I am," I answered. I finally put something down. She nodded as if she understood more than I had said. Before leaving, she paused. "Whatever you're doing," she added softly, "keep doing it. Your heart likes it." When the room was mine again, I took the envelope out of the drawer and added one final page. Not an explanation. Not an accusation. Just a boundary, written plainly, without flourish. When I was done, I slid it back inside, sealed it, and wrote their names once more. I didn't cry. I felt empty in a way that wasn't hollow, but ready. That night, as rain tapped steadily against the window, I slept deeply for the first time since the ambulance ride. No dreams. No replays. Just rest. And somewhere, beneath bandages and scars and 66 years of habit, a new intention took root. Quiet, resolute, and irreversible. Morning came softly, filtered through clouds that looked bruised and heavy with rain. I woke before the nurse's rounds, my body stiff but my mind strangely clear. For once, the first thought that surfaced was not my son's. It was the simple awareness of breath moving in and out of my chest, of being present inside my own body instead of stretched thin across everyone else's needs. The envelope sat where I had left it, unmoving. I did not open it again. I already knew what it contained. It was not a weapon. It was a line drawn. Nora woke a little later, rubbing her eyes, complaining about the chair. She smiled when she saw me sitting upright with my legs dangling off the bed. "You look like you're planning something," she said. "I am," I answered. "I just don't know all the details yet." "That's okay," she replied. "You never needed a full map before. You just kept walking." The nurse came in with breakfast, oatmeal, toast, a small cup of fruit. I ate slowly, deliberately, tasting each bite as if it mattered. 4 years, meals had been rushed or eaten standing, always multitasking, always thinking of the next thing to do for someone else. This time, I let myself simply eat. Later in the morning, Dr. Klein returned, clipboard tucked under his arm. He explained medication adjustments, cautioned me about exertion, reminded me that recovery was not a straight line. "Stress," he said, tapping the paper, "is your biggest enemy right now." I met his gaze. "Then I'm going to remove as much of it as I can." He smiled, assuming I meant diet and exercise. Good. That's exactly the right mindset. He left without knowing how literal I was being. After he was gone, I asked Nora to bring my purse from the apartment when she had time. She looked at me carefully. "You sure you want things from there?" she asked. "I want my documents," I replied. "Birth certificate. Social security card. The important pieces. The rest can wait." Nora nodded slowly. "I'll go this afternoon." While she was gone, I lay back and let memories surface. Not the sharp ones, but the small, quiet moments that had been buried under obligation. The way I used to love reading before bed, novels borrowed from the library, pages smelling faintly of dust and glue. The pleasure of walking with no destination, just letting streets unfold. The satisfaction of finishing something purely for myself. I realized how many parts of me had been packed away, labeled impractical or selfish, and stored in the back of my life. Around noon, a social worker came by to discuss discharge planning. She spoke kindly, efficiently, outlining options, asking questions about my support system. "My friend will help me," I said. "And I may not be returning to my apartment right away." She raised her eyebrows slightly. "Do you have somewhere else to stay?" "I will," I answered, surprising myself with how certain it sounded. She nodded, making a note. "That's fine. Just make sure wherever you go is calm and safe." Calm. Safe. 2 words that had rarely applied to my emotional life. In the afternoon, my phone buzzed again. I turned it on just long enough to see the message preview. "Mom, please talk to us. This is getting out of hand. Owen." I turned the phone face down without opening it. Something about the phrase "out of hand" struck me. As if my pain were an inconvenience, my reaction a misbehavior that needed correcting. The old version of me would have rushed to reassure him, to smooth things over, to take responsibility for his discomfort. Instead, I felt tired. Deeply, bone-level tired. Lila noticed my expression when she came in to check my vitals. Everything okay? Yes, I said honestly. I'm just done explaining myself. She smiled gently. That can be very healing. Nora returned later, damp from the rain, carrying a canvas bag. She handed it to me without ceremony. Your papers are in here, she said. I didn't touch anything else. Thank you, I replied, clutching the bag like a lifeline. She hesitated, then added, Your oldest stopped by the apartment while I was there. My stomach tightened. Did he? He knocked, she continued. I didn't answer. Relief washed through me, followed by something harder to name. He waited a few minutes, Nora said, then left. I nodded. That image, him standing there, confused, inconvenienced, felt oddly balanced. Not satisfying. Just appropriate. That evening after dinner, I asked Nora to sit with me. I pulled the envelope from the drawer and placed it on the tray table between us. When I leave this hospital, I said, I want you to give this to them. Not before. Not after a warning. Just give it. Nora studied the envelope, then looked up at me. Are you sure? Yes. She reached out and covered my hand with hers. Then I'll do exactly that. The next morning, I woke with a sense of anticipation that bordered on nervous excitement. The doctor confirmed what I already felt. If all went well, I could be discharged within 48 hours. 48 hours until my old life officially ended. That day passed in a blur of routine checks and quiet reflection. I wrote in a small notebook Nora had brought me, not about my sons, but about myself. Things I liked. Things I wanted to try. Places I might go. It felt strange at first, like writing in a foreign language, but gradually the words came easier. I liked mornings. I liked gardens. I liked learning. I liked people who listened. Simple truths, ignored for decades. The following afternoon, Caleb called again. This time, I answered. Mom, he said immediately, relief flooding his voice. Thank God. We've been worried sick. I closed my eyes. Have you? Yes, he insisted. This isn't like you. You're scaring us. There it was again, the focus on their fear, not my pain. I had a heart attack, I said quietly. I died for several minutes. Where were you? A pause. Then defensiveness. You know why we couldn't come. I know why you chose not to, I corrected. Mom, he said, frustration seeping in. What do you want from us now? The question echoed in the space between us. I want you to understand, I said slowly, that I am no longer available to be treated as optional. He exhaled sharply. So what, you're cutting us off? I'm choosing myself, I replied. If that feels like a loss to you, then maybe it always was. Silence stretched. I imagined him rubbing his forehead, searching for an argument that would restore the old order. This is extreme, he said finally. So I was almost dying alone, I answered. I ended the call gently, without anger, without apology. Afterward, my hands shook, not with fear, but with the release of something tightly held. Lila noticed and sat with me until it passed. You did something hard, she said. Your body will catch up. That night, I dreamed for the first time since the surgery. Not of ambulances or hospital lights, but of standing at a bus stop with a small suitcase, watching a road stretch forward into open land. I didn't know where it led, only that it moved away from where I'd been. When I woke, my heart was steady. The final day before discharge arrived quietly. The rain had stopped. Sunlight streamed through the window, pale but determined. Nora helped me dress in my own clothes, a simple sweater, comfortable shoes. I felt like myself again, though changed. Dr. Klein shook my hand. Take care of yourself, he said. And remember, your life matters. I smiled at him. I won't forget again. As Nora wheeled me toward the exit, I glanced back once at the ward. Not with resentment. With gratitude. It had been the place where my body broke, and where my illusions finally did too. Outside, the air smelled clean, washed by rain. Nora loaded my bag into the car and turned to me. "Where to first?" she asked. I looked ahead, not behind. "Somewhere quiet," I said. "Somewhere I can hear myself think." She smiled and started the engine. And as the hospital faded from view, I felt something unfamiliar but deeply right settle into my chest. Not fear, not anger, but resolve. Whatever came next, it would be chosen. By me. The drive away from the hospital felt unreal, as if the city itself had shifted while I was inside and now revealed a different face. The streets looked the same, the traffic lights blinked on schedule, people hurried along sidewalks with their collars turned up against the lingering chill, yet I felt removed from it all, like I was watching life through glass. Nora drove slowly, careful with every turn, as if my chest were made of porcelain. "Do you want to go back to your apartment?" she asked gently. "Or would you rather stay with me for a bit?" I looked out the window, watching familiar blocks pass by. The bakery on the corner where I used to buy day-old bread. The dry cleaner that still had my winter coat I hadn't picked up. All the small markers of a life lived on autopilot. "No," I said after a moment. "Not yet. I don't want to sleep there tonight." Nora nodded, as if she had expected that answer. "Then you'll come with me. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Her apartment was modest but warm, filled with plants and mismatched furniture collected over years rather than bought all at once. She had always lived this way, slowly, intentionally, without apologizing for it. I realized how often I had admired that in her without ever imagining I could do the same. She settled me on the couch with pillows and a blanket and disappeared into the kitchen. The smell of soup soon filled the room, simple and comforting. When she set the bowl in my hands, I noticed she had cut the vegetables small, as if anticipating that chewing might tire me. "Eat," she said. "No talking about big life decisions tonight." I smiled faintly. Agreed. But even as I ate, my thoughts drifted to the envelope waiting in her bag, the words sealed inside it. The knowledge that it existed, that it would soon be read, sat in my chest like a quiet drumbeat. That evening passed without drama. Nora put on a documentary neither of us really watched. I dozed, waking occasionally to the sound of her moving around, the soft clink of dishes, the hum of the refrigerator. It felt strangely intimate, being cared for without strings attached. Later, lying in the guest room she had prepared, I stared at the ceiling fan turning slowly overhead. My body ached in the dull, deep way of healing flesh. Each breath still reminded me of what I had survived. But beneath the discomfort, there was something else, anticipation. I wasn't afraid of what my sons would say when they read the letter. I was afraid of what I might feel. Regret, guilt, doubt. Old reflexes die hard, especially when they have been reinforced by decades of expectation. Morning came with pale sunlight and the smell of coffee. Nora was already up, tapping at her phone with a look of mild irritation. "They've been calling me," she said when she saw me. "Both of them." I didn't answer. "Thank you," I said again, aware of how often I had said those words to her in the past few days. Gratitude felt different now. Less desperate, more grounded. After breakfast, she placed the envelope on the table between us. "If you want to change anything," she said carefully, "now is the time." I picked it up, feeling the weight of the paper. For a brief moment, the urge to open it surged, an almost physical pull to soften the words, to add reassurance, to leave a door cracked open. That urge was familiar. It was the voice that had kept me stuck. I set the envelope back down unopened. "No," I said. "It says what it needs to say." Nora nodded, picked it up, and slipped it into her bag. "Then I'll go this afternoon." After she left, the apartment felt too quiet. I moved slowly, exploring the space, touching objects as if anchoring myself to the present. A photograph on the wall showed Nora and her late husband hiking in the mountains, both laughing, wind whipping their hair. The image radiated a kind of partnership I had never allowed myself to imagine. I sat by the window and watched the street below. A young mother struggled with a stroller while juggling a phone call. An older man walked a dog that tugged eagerly at the leash. Life, unbothered by my private upheaval, continued. For the first time, that didn't hurt. By the time Nora returned, the sky had darkened again, clouds gathering low. She set her bag down and leaned against the door for a moment before speaking. "It's done," she said. My heart thudded, hard enough that I instinctively touched my chest. "Tell me." She exhaled slowly, as if replaying the scene in her mind. "I went to Owen's house." Serena answered the door. She looked annoyed at first, like I was interrupting something. When I said I had a letter from you, her expression changed. "What did she say?" She said, "Is she being dramatic again?" The words stung, even though I had expected them. I closed my eyes briefly. "Owen came in from the kitchen," Nora continued. "When he saw the envelope, he asked where you were. I told him I didn't know. That you'd asked me to deliver the letter and nothing more. And then he opened it," she said. "Right there." He started reading out loud without realizing it. I could picture it vividly. His brow furrowing, his mouth opening to argue, then slowly closing as the words sank in. "He went very quiet," Nora said. Serena read over his shoulder. Halfway through, she told him to stop reading and demanded I tell her where you were. "And you didn't." "I didn't," Nora confirmed. "I told them exactly what you told me to say." My pulse slowed, steadied by her certainty. "What about Caleb?" I asked. "They called him," she replied. "He came over within 20 minutes. Marin came too." My jaw tightened. "All of them?" "Yes." And when Caleb finished reading, he sat down like his legs gave out. He kept saying, "She can't mean this. She's just hurt." "And did they look hurt?" I asked. Nora met my gaze. "They looked scared." Something inside me loosened, not pleasure, not satisfaction, but a release. Fear meant they finally understood loss as something real, not hypothetical. "They asked me again where you were," Nora continued. "They wanted me to help them find you. I told them I couldn't." "What did Serena say?" "She said mothers don't abandon their children," Nora replied quietly. I let out a short, humorless breath. Funny. No one ever says children don't abandon their mothers. Nora reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "When I left, they were arguing. Not about you. About what they should do next." That too felt fitting. That night, my phone lit up with messages the moment I turned it on. Missed calls. Voicemails. Texts that ranged from pleading to indignant to apologetic. "Mom, please call me. This has gone too far. We can talk about this like adults. You're hurting everyone. We're worried about you. We didn't know it was that serious. Please just tell us where you are." I read them all, slowly, without the rush of adrenaline I might once have felt. When I finished, I turned the phone off again. "I'm not ready," I said aloud to the empty room. And for once, that was enough. Days passed. My body healed incrementally. I took short walks with Nora, stopping when my chest tightened, learning to listen instead of push through. Each step felt symbolic, measured, intentional, my pace determined by my own limits rather than external demands. In the quiet moments, doubt crept in. Late at night, when pain flared or exhaustion hit, I wondered if I was being cruel. If I would regret this when I was older, weaker, alone. Then I would remember the hospital ceiling, the sound of the monitor, the empty doorway, and the doubt would recede. One afternoon, Nora brought me my mail from the apartment. Most of it was junk, a few bills, a church flyer. At the bottom of the stack was an envelope with Caleb's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time. "You don't have to open it," Nora said gently. "I know," I replied. I held it, feeling the paper bend slightly under my fingers. This was the test, I realized. Not whether I could leave, but whether I could stay gone. Finally, I set it aside unopened. Not yet, I said. That evening, I called my cousin in Dallas. Hope, I said when she answered. Are you serious about that invitation you made years ago? She laughed softly. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't mean it. What's going on? I need a place to start over, I said. Somewhere no one expects anything from me except that I exist. There was a pause, then warmth flooded her voice. Then come. I have a spare room and more time than I know what to do with. You'll be welcome here for as long as you want. When I hung up, my hands trembled, not with fear, but with excitement. Dallas. A different city. Different streets. Different routines. A chance to redefine myself without the weight of history pressing down on every interaction. That night, I told Nora. She listened carefully, then smiled, though her eyes shone with unshed tears. I knew this day would come, she said. I just didn't know when. I don't want to disappear from you, I said quickly. You won't, she replied. You're not running away. You're moving towards something. We planned quietly, carefully. A bus ticket. A small suitcase. Essentials only. I felt like a woman half my age, plotting a future instead of bracing for an ending. The night before I left, I dreamed again of the road, but this time I knew where it led. Open sky. Space to breathe. No voices calling me back. When I woke, the decision felt settled, heavy and right. I wrote a short message to my sons, not explaining, not apologizing. By the time you read this, I will be far away. Please respect my choice. I need time and distance to heal. I am safe. I am choosing myself. I did not send it yet. That would come later. As Nora drove me to the bus station before dawn, the city still slept. Streetlights cast long shadows across empty roads. I watched familiar landmarks slide past and felt no urge to memorize them. At the terminal, she hugged me tightly. Call me when you arrive, she said. And every week after that. I will, I promised. When the bus doors opened, I climbed aboard with my small suitcase and a heart that beat steadily, no longer driven by obligation. As the bus pulled away, I sent the message and turned my phone off. The city receded. The road opened. And for the first time in decades, the life ahead of me felt like it belonged to me alone. The bus rumbled beneath me, a low, steady vibration that traveled up through the soles of my shoes and into my bones. I chose a seat by the window and rested my forehead lightly against the cool glass. Outside, the city dissolved into a blur of dim lights and empty streets, then into long stretches of road bordered by trees and silence. Each mile carried me farther from a life that had been defined by duty and closer to something unknown, something unclaimed. At first, sleep refused to come. My body was exhausted, but my mind kept circling, replaying moments from the past few days like scenes from a film I had already watched but couldn't quite stop reviewing. Owen's voice on the phone. Caleb's defensive pauses. Serena's dismissive comment. Marin's polished apologies. The hospital ceiling. The envelope. Then, gradually, the motion of the bus lulled me. The rhythm steadied my thoughts. I let my eyes close. When I woke again, the sky outside had softened from black to deep blue. Dawn hovered just out of sight. Most of the other passengers slept, their heads tilted awkwardly, coats pulled tight. A man across the aisle snored quietly. Somewhere near the front, a baby stirred, then settled. I felt oddly anonymous, and the feeling comforted me. No one on this bus knew my history. No one knew how much I had given, how much I had swallowed, how close I had come to disappearing without anyone noticing. To them, I was just another older woman traveling alone, carrying a small suitcase and a private destination. As the sun finally rose, light spilled across the land in wide, gentle strokes. Fields appeared, then small towns, then open stretches of highway that seemed to promise space rather than demand explanation. I watched it all with a calm attention I hadn't felt in years. At a rest stop mid-morning, the bus pulled in and the driver announced a short break. I stepped down carefully, breathing in air that smelled faintly of gasoline and wet earth. My chest tightened slightly, reminding me of my limits, and I slowed without frustration. There was no one to rush for now. Inside the convenience store, I bought a cup of tea and sat by the window. I caught my reflection in the glass. Tired, yes, but steadier. My eyes looked clearer, less apologetic. I realized that for the first time in my adult life, I wasn't waiting for a phone call, a message, or approval from anyone. I returned to my seat when the bus departed again, carrying that realization with me like a fragile but precious object. Sometime in the early afternoon, my phone vibrated in my bag. I hesitated, then reached in and pulled it out. Several missed calls. More messages. I didn't read them. Instead, I opened a new note and typed a single sentence, just for myself. I am allowed to leave what hurts me. I saved it and turned the phone off again. By the time the bus rolled into Dallas, the sun was high and warm, the sky wide and pale. The station buzzed with movement, people greeting each other, drivers calling out destinations, luggage wheels rattling across concrete. I stood slowly, letting the sensation of arrival settle into me. And then I saw her. Hope stood near the edge of the platform, wearing a light jacket and holding a canvas tote, her gray hair pulled back loosely. She spotted me almost instantly and smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes and stayed there. "There you are," she said when she reached me, wrapping me in a hug that was firm and unhurried. "You look tired. But you also look lighter." I laughed softly, surprised by the truth of it. "I feel lighter." She took my suitcase without asking and led me to her car, chatting easily as if no time had passed since our last conversation years ago. She didn't pry. She didn't demand explanations. She simply welcomed me. Her house sat on a quiet street lined with trees, sunlight filtering through leaves and dappling the driveway. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon and clean laundry. The guest room she showed me was simple but bright, with a window that looked out onto a small garden. "You can rest," she said. "We'll talk when you're ready." That afternoon, I slept deeply, the kind of sleep that sinks all the way into the body. When I woke, the ache in my chest was still there, but it felt manageable, no longer wrapped in panic. From the kitchen came the sound of Hope humming softly as she cooked. We ate dinner together at a small table, talking about ordinary things, her neighbors, the local market, a park she liked to walk in the mornings. Only once did she touch the edge of what had brought me there. "You know," she said gently, "you don't owe anyone an explanation for taking care of yourself." "I'm starting to understand that," I replied. That night, lying in a bed that wasn't tied to memory or obligation, I let myself imagine a future measured not by what I gave up, but by what I chose. Maybe I will take a class. Maybe I would volunteer somewhere that valued my time. Maybe I would simply sit in the garden and read. None of it had to be decided now. Outside, the city hummed softly, different from the one I had left behind but no less alive. I closed my eyes, my heart beating steadily, and felt a quiet certainty settle over me. This wasn't an ending. It was the first chapter one had written entirely for myself.